Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Ben Stewart Podcast. So good to be back. We missed you last week, and last week was going to be with our guest that we have this week, so don't worry, you missed nothing. A few months back, there's this conscious cat from South Africa, and he hits me up on Instagram. His name is Ben Brown, and he's a content creator capturing his experiences of expanded consciousness, emotional intelligence, things like self-healing, psychedelic journeys, and diving into the inner world, which is all stuff that I absolutely love. It's his hope that these offerings will help others feel connected to shared experience and the lessons be applied to help make sense of this beautifully complex human life. Here on that. He's also the host of the New Perceptions podcast, which I was listening to earlier today and inspired some questions that I have for him today. So without further ado, thank you guys for joining us again, and get ready for the Ben Stewart Podcast. We're here. Right. We made it.
Good.
What's up?
Ben Brown, man, such an honor to have you on the program. Just saying my thanks and my respect to you for everything you're doing, man. I've been loving following you on Instagram. Absolutely loving it. And
thank you, man. I really appreciate that. And yeah, also just so honored to be creating this beautiful little mind meld with you as well. And yeah, to just converse with you about some really interesting topics. A lot of those topics actually are the sort of ways that I discovered you, in fact. And you've
Okay.
been such a big inspiration to me in my life and my journey. So this is just like magic for me right now. Thank you.
Awesome. This is going to be a great
Very
conversation. Gordo over here, go ahead and say hi. What's up?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Well, I am excited to be here, and we got two Bens in the house today, everyone. So bear with me if we get a little bit meta. I might be calling them by last names, but besides that, very cool. I didn't know that Ben Brown, that Ben's been an influence in your life, so it's kind of synchronistic here. So excited. Let's do it.
Let's talk about another synchronicity real quick, just because I see the shirt that I'm wearing. This guy, Matt Zian, he moderates the DMT Spirit Molecule Facebook page. He comes over. We're interviewing Jamie Wheel from the Flow Genome Project today. And so Matt was like, yo, and there's this guy, like he's got over 500,000, followers on Instagram. He just started following me today. He's only following like 300 people. And for some reason I just knew. I was like, is he from South Africa? He was like, yeah. I was like, I'm talking to him today, literally in a couple hours. So these synchronicities, it's pretty funny how that comes up. He's a cool guy. He works, he has some management company for podcasts as well, which is, up and coming in the world. So loving how these things work out.
Yeah, that's mad synchronistic, dude, because I can't remember. I mean, as with all of these things, it just kind of appears in my reality, someone new, and I'm like, okay, this person is vibing with this other person that I really vibe with. And I can't remember who was a guest on his podcast, but basically I've just been binge listening to all of Matt's podcasts over the last week and had to follow him on Instagram. And I suppose that's one of the weird things about having like 500,000 followers on Instagram, is that you have a bit of clout, I suppose. So people notice when you follow them. But yeah, I also listen. I'm a big fan of Third Eye Drops podcast.
Yeah, he manages them. He manages them.
Yeah, I know. I've been piecing all of these puzzle pieces together, and I'm like,
it's bigger than us.
How have I found myself in this world, actually having conversations with these people who I'm like trying not to pedestal too hard in my reality,
It's pretty cool, man. And like what I've liked about you from the beginning, like when I noticed you started following me, by the way, for the audience, yes, I'm in a Hobbit house right now. Legit. I'm in Northern Austin. It's a Hobbit house Airbnb.
Shia.
It was built in the 70s. They're tearing it down for another mansion because God knows the world needs more of that. It's a pretty cool little spot. But we found 2 scorpions in the house today, right next to my daughter's bed. So that was a nice surprise that Austin threw us. Aside from that, so I saw that you were following me on Instagram, and I checked out your page, and the first thing I did was I noticed that these were excellent shots, beautiful shots. And then there's shots of you in the water. So it's like, oh, this guy loves the ocean. He loves moving. And there's something about surfer and surfer mentality and just, hanging out at surf all the time. There's almost this like spiritual Zen ideology that just naturally seems to come with it. And I noticed that in you. What I like about you is your tone of voice, your matter of factness without being strong, heavy, heavy-handed, heavy in the head, needing to prove something. You got this like flow state thing going on, while at the same time you speak the things on my level, which I really dig about the human experience, what certain things mean. You're not afraid of mentioning that the world is happening, but where's our potential? Who are we in the midst of all this stuff going on? And so I really, I've connected with, the more that I've connected with you, I should say, the more I realize there's this humility inside you and very groundedness to you. And I gotta know, before we launch into anything else, what are some of your daily rituals, your daily habits that you engage in that you feel really keeps you grounded and allowing yourself to feel safe to just be who you are amidst all the whatever's going on?
Flip, so many compliments. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's so interesting because actually it's only really very recently that I've actually found myself to be quite comfortable being grounded and being in my body and being myself, and feeling like I'm only just sort of getting to know who I really am, who the authentic version of myself is, when I'm not trying to like impress anybody. And yeah, I'm starting to understand that I have a tendency to spend a lot of time in my head. And that's not where my comfortable flow state is. I do spend a lot of time in the ocean. I spend a lot of time in nature, and that kind of helps me bring me back down into my body. I don't know how into astrology you are, but I'm a Pisces, so I generally find it quite uncomfortable to be incarnated in a physical form. I feel very deeply, and I'm very sensitive, and so to be in the body is becoming actually just like a practice, and a daily practice, really. So my rituals, I've been really finding my feet with my rituals at the moment, and it's fundamentally just time in nature and time with the breath. Like, I'm really learning about the power of the breath right now. And it's funny because even as I mention it, I'm like, remember to keep breathing through this podcast. I'm feeling a little bit anxious, and this is like a growth edge for me, having these kinds of conversations and doing it live. And I know that once I do get into my body and I get out of my head about things, I can get into a really nice flow state. But breath, for me, breath work in the morning is a really important one. And more recently, I've been also microdosing, doing the Stammet stack with the microdose.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had that niacin flush in the stack before.
No, there's somebody in Austin that was just talking about it, not to cut you off, but I've been hearing about it a lot lately, which probably means it's coming at me soon. So please tell us more about that. And yes, I heard on the Otter podcast, which we'll get to, you talking about the Stammet stack and the breath work and stuff like that.
And now is that Paul Stamets?
Yeah, it's something of
Paul Stamets.
Yeah, Paul Stamets.
So explain
I've
that.
been microdosing a little bit. Yeah, I've been microdosing a little bit, but not really bringing much structure to it. So not really measuring things out. But I made a good friend in the town that I'm staying in at the moment, who's creating these beautiful microdosing capsules, and lion's mane, golden teachers, psilocybin 0.1 gram, and niacin, vitamin B3, I think. But the combination of which is quite an experience in itself. And I take it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach with some water, and I just drop into a meditation. And within 15-20 minutes, the niacin is just fully vasodilating, like dilating all the capillaries throughout my whole body. And I go completely red, and my skin kind of gets a little bit itchy. And I have this feeling that it's like pushing all of the rest of the medicine of the other mushrooms like into every cell of my being. And I then start going into some holotropic breath work at the same time. I find that to be, with or without the microdose, just the way that I like to have like a spiritual connection. That's kind of my go-to for a spiritual connection, is like a few rounds of breath work first thing in the morning. And that sets me up perfectly for my day. And I've done 4 of those days over the last week, and it's really helped me in a very recent shift that I felt in my being, that is kind of difficult to explain. But just it's one of those tools that's sort of built into my daily ritual, along with breath work, time in nature, swimming in the ocean first thing in the morning. Have a very good connection with water. And I grew up actually kayaking in the UK, is where I grew up, in the county of Surrey, which is just outside London. And there's some beautiful parts of the river, the famous River Thames, that flows through Surrey. And so I found myself at a canoe club And by the time I was sort of 12 years old, I was there every single day. And by the time I was 15 or 16, it was like twice a day. I got really serious about it. And it was a racing kayak club. So I was super happy spending most of my days on the water. And when I was a kid, we used to go on surfing holidays down to the west country of the UK, down into Cornwall and Devon. And I used to grab my bodyboard, put the wetsuit on, eat half a Cornish pasty, and just spend like the whole day in the ocean, happy as a clam. Like that's the place that I want to be. And living right next to the ocean, Cape Town, you were surrounded by oceans as well, so you can't really get too far from the sea. But that's a huge part of my ritual as well, is just spending time in nature, really. That's where I find my mind sort of calms down, and I can just be in my body, and everything kind of makes a little bit more sense. And yeah, I don't know if you feel that. I'm sure you feel that as well when you go into nature. It's just like a higher vibration. It feels like a healing vibration. It feels like coming home to me when I go for a walk in the nature reserve here.
Yeah. It feels better to the nervous system. It really does.
It's like a mental massage.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, what is it? Is it Japan? In Japan, they call it forest bathing. And it's interesting they put that bathing part on, because it really is. It doesn't feel like it's just hitting your feet, like you're bathing in it. It's all around you, and you're speaking my language, because I used to live in Hawaii. I used to live in Kwajalein in the Marshall Islands, and I was always a lot more accustomed to being right next to the ocean than anything else. And I find myself as I move around that I feel landlocked a lot. I actually feel kind of landlocked if I don't have a ton of water near me. Even if there's streams nearby and I can dip my feet in, sometimes it doesn't do enough because the ocean is so vast. So I definitely feel that.
You need a body of water, like a lake.
A body of water, something real, that holds a lot of majesty as well. No, it looks like I shrunk. I lost.
You're fine. I think it's just your connection. We're gonna bear with your Shire connection.
Yeah, it's definitely it's Frodo's fucking with me right now. But
yeah.
With that being said, it's definitely Sauron. So I guess what I wanted to get into before I get into the podcast, which I like, the New Perceptions podcast, I want to ask about. So you mentioned there was an interesting shift that happened inside you. Seemed like it was slightly ineffable, kind of difficult to put words around. Is there anything that you think would benefit the audience, of understanding? Was this a psycho-spiritual thing? Was it a physiological thing? Was it what's happening in the world? Like, what was this shift, and what started pushing you deeper down this road of, I guess just the conscious path, like talking about reconnection to nature? Who are we? What is our role in the greater scheme of things? Because I've heard you talk about these. What and also how has breath work helped inform or help integrate or push you along that path as well?
So I suppose a good place to start would be sort of about 3.5 years ago. I was creating a shitload of content on my YouTube channel. I was for a few years I did daily vlogs. Back when there was only like a bunch of us doing daily vlogs, and I suppose I was one of the first sort of travel influencers. So I kind of rode that very early YouTube train, and I found myself just so busy in my life with so many things causing me so much stress. I just was super overwhelmed. And thankfully, I had a motorcycle accident. And thankfully, it was also quite a slow one. And nobody was at fault except me. And I basically high-sided myself over my motorcycle and fractured my whole elbow. Now, because I was kayaking so much when I was younger, and I was on the British team for kayaking for like 10 years, I pretty much stayed away from anything dangerous or anything that I perceived would make me go slower in a kayak. So everything was just about going faster in a kayak. So I lived in this quite protected bubble, and for good reason. And so this was my first surgery that I'd ever had. The first time I'd really spent a night in hospital, and this was 3.5 years ago. I'm 35 now. So like when I was about 31, 32 years old. And quite a wake-up call for me to have to sit and recover from this surgery and not be busy. I just had to sit and be with myself finally for a while. And it was hell. I hated it. I was like, I realized that I fucking hated myself. And
Oof.
And I hated the overwhelming life that I'd created for myself. And I went into this really, well, what I suppose a lot of people would refer to as like the dark night of the soul, where I went from being known as the literally like Captain Positive on YouTube. The feedback I was getting was like, how are you always so positive about life? And I was like, well, what's there to complain about? I have the best life ever. I get paid to travel the world. And then I had to make a video for people and say, look, my arm is like swollen 3 times the size, and I'm starting to understand what people are talking about when they say mental health. I feel like I feel like I'm not actually as happy as I make out in my videos. And so there's many, many layers to this story that people might find particularly interesting, but there's like codependent relationship with my audience, where I was dependent on their feedback and their validation. And suddenly a bunch of people in my audience were like, well, what have you got to complain about? Like, don't talk to me about depression when I'd give my right arm for your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And that kind of broke my heart. And I was like, wow, I actually can't rely on these random strangers on the internet for my happiness, it turns out. So that was quite a wake-up call. And then that going from being super positive and having the best life ever, and really just refusing to complain about anything, feeling guilty anytime I sort of complained about anything, to really facing up to the reality that I was miserable, and I didn't know what to do about it. I had no emotional intelligence. I didn't know how I was feeling. I didn't know how to explain how I was feeling to people. And as I sort of went on this path, I was like realizing there were a few moments in that dark night of the soul where I was like, fuck, I don't even know if I want to be here really actually anymore. And in those moments, I was like, how have I got here? Like, how have I really got here right now? Is this real even? And so as things happen with the universe, kind of like the universe was like putting a few people in my life that were helping me on my journey. And I met a few people who were able to, as they say, hold space for some deep and meaningful conversations and some emotions to start flowing out of me. And I started to realize, it's healthy to cry. Like, it's healthy to feel whatever the emotion is that I'm sat with right now. And that was just a revelation for me for my whole life, being such a sensitive being, like, and I know now that like I can feel things so deeply, and it's such a beautiful, profound part of who I am. It's like I'm literally here to feel it all. That's part of my whole reason for existing. And I was suppressing this and pushing all of these emotions and feelings down for my whole 30-odd years. And then, yeah, the dam broke, and for months I would just cry and be confused and move through all sorts of different emotions and feelings, and really not knowing what any of this meant, but at the same time trying to explain to people in my life that I wasn't happy and I didn't know what I was doing and I needed help. And this was the hard thing for me to do, was like to ask for support and ask for help. And so an interesting thing happened actually on this journey, is like, as I was trying to find the words to ask for help and ask for support, and on occasion even trying to convince people that I needed, that like I wasn't in a good space, I got something called Bell's palsy, which is where half your face just stops working and it's like melted, and none of the nerves work in the one side and none of the muscles work. And so I'm like on a YouTube video going, things aren't good. Like, and then finally a few people were like, okay, shit, things are really not that good. And that was luckily it only lasted for 3 weeks, but it was a real helpful aspect of my journey that helped people actually pay attention to my mental health condition. And so now I'm like, well, there must be some kind of meaning to all of this suffering. Like that, and now I'm looking for meaning. Now I'm asking questions like, why? Why depression? Why so much anxiety? Why the questioning of whether I'm even supposed to be here or not? And as with these things, when you start to discover that it's real for yourself, then we start to have empathy for all the other people who it's been real for a long time. I just haven't really noticed because it wasn't anything to do with me, like anxiety, depression. And there's also a lot of other people who are asking these big questions and have been asking these questions for a long, long time. Like, why are we here? What's the purpose of existence? Give me some reason for all of this suffering. And then I realized my grounding cord for being here actually is the spirituality. Like then I grabbed hold of that as like my life raft. Is this sort of making sense, this story of how I...
It is. It's a beautiful journey. And I'm barely visible again. It's all good. See if Gordo can add some pounds on me. There we go.
Your solo's good. Let me see if I can see what's going on.
Perfect. Yeah, so no, what I really appreciate about it is the humility in which you bring to the process, and being honest with how you really feel, like how you really felt going along this road. And I can't tell you the amount of people that I either come across, some that I coach, that they haven't been this honest with themselves historically because they had to play that role of the hero, the one who's always okay, the one who doesn't need to ask help from anybody. And I think that like this is something that is timeless, but it's also very relevant in today's world with what's going on. Is there are a lot of people who have no clue how to feel okay, how to calm their nervous system down, how to not have anxiety during this time period, because let's just say this time period must have felt like a physical like attack on their nervous system, on their business, on everything that made them feel secure, the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. And so the fact that you mentioned that you were even capable of putting on that face, everything's great, when you noticed maybe not everything is that great, so you started tapping into how you're actually feeling, not this outer show that you were given, and you were able to be honest with that. That's something that I can say, like, for most people, the biggest obstacle in their way is always themselves. But the thing that gets in their way is they don't even see their suffering truly. They keep hiding it so they can look strong, powerful, not seem dependent upon other people. And I kind of feel like nowadays more people are resorting to what is actually tribal. It goes way back. It's super important, and that is the group, and allowing them to mirror you back to you. Because sometimes some people think that they are absolutely a mess, and others are like, nah, bro, you're having a hard moment, and it's going to be okay. I feel it. I see it in you. I see that you're strong. I can see you're confused, and I know this will last. And then other times we think we're okay, and others are mirroring back to us. There's something that's not okay going on inside you. And so there's something about the group and the mirrors and the relations that we have that can help us along that spiritual path. And I like the honesty that I'm hearing from you in that respect. And the bottom line is we're talking. I know so many people that are going through this, but you're also an influencer, and through that, you actually did something that I know most people, maybe not most people, but a lot of people wouldn't have done, which is shown yourself in a matter that makes you look, you know, not in control of who you are, not having
Mm.
everything figured out, and also, like, let's not pretend that looks are nothing. Um, when half your face is drooping, there's a deep psychological thing that's like, am I really going to show my face to, I don't know how much, what your audience size was, but probably pretty hefty at that point, for you to have to show yourself in a not very attractive mode. And that was finally what got people's attention. So
Yeah.
for one, I just want to honor that. And then I really want to ask, like, where or when did you decide to start your podcast? Because it looks like you're on episode 23, which was the otter episode. So like
Yeah,
what
man.
prompted you to move into a podcast?
Firstly, I want to say, like I'm still doing a lot of this work. Like I'm still integrating everything that I'm learning about the breath and how to calm my nervous system and self soothe. And I think living in Cape Town, in the south of Cape Town, in the nature, surrounded by nature, with really not that many triggering things other than what I might find on the internet, it's quite easy for me to maintain a calm nervous system here. And that's actually been what's required over the last few months for me to actually do some deep resting and really come back to calmness. But yeah, I feel like the honesty piece is one of the hardest aspects of all of this. It's hard. I found it hard as a man to admit that I was struggling, and I still do. I still do. I'll try all the ways of trying to figure it out myself before asking for help. And I think that's just kind of ingrained in us, and sort of programmed into us as men.
Yeah.
We can't even
we
ask
don't
for
want to
directions.
appear weak. Yeah, we can't even ask for directions. You're right. Yeah, and that's something that is actually becoming less triggering and more fascinating for me. Like with a lot of these things, a lot of these aspects of this sort of awakening journey or a healing journey, it's like I'm allowing my curiosity to lead. And like, yeah, I mean, the New Perceptions podcast is a podcast that I started a couple of years ago. I was hoping to have a few more than 20 odd episodes in the bank by now, but again, it's along with a lot of my content that I have and haven't been putting out over the last couple of years, it's like I still don't feel entirely safe being completely vulnerable on the internet. And I think that's been partly to do with the crazy judgment that comes from putting yourself on the internet. But also partly because I've used the internet to earn my living for such a long time. And it feels scary to create content that I know is not only less popular than the happy-go-lucky kind of positive, almost overly positive some of the time, content that people would rather tune into and escape from or be inspired by. To talk about deep shit is to hold a mirror up to whoever's listening. And it's like, I want to talk about some deep stuff. I want to get honest and talk about where I'm struggling. And if the person listening to that hasn't already been kind of introduced to that journey or done any of that internal work, or faced up to their own demons or struggles, then it can be super triggering. Nobody wants to listen to that. So to the point where it's not like, okay, yeah, this isn't for me anymore, but people will literally attack you for being that open and honest. And that has also partly been because I made 1,300 odd videos on the internet, most of which are like high-end daily travel vlogs that I poured my heart and soul into. But there's also some really high-end travel films on there that I call visual vibes. So to go from creating this like inspiring travel content, which is mostly inspiring lifestyle content, to then say, oh, I'm actually not happy, and I'm actually going to need to do some deep internal work and take a long, hard look at myself in order to carry on. And you guys are going to have to wait. The free content is going to be on pause for a minute. And it's like, actually, it's not going to be on pause. I'm just going to allow my channel to be a reflection of where I'm actually at. And even though most people aren't going to be appreciating it or want to hear it, there's a whole bunch of people who are really appreciating the vulnerability and the sharing of the journey. I'm way off of perfection still. I'm like, and I think the beauty of sharing exactly where I am right now without worrying too much about whether I'm getting it right, or I'm saying the right things, but just sharing from a place of like truth and honesty. This is how I feel right now. That also gives other people permission to say, or not even to say it to someone else, but just say it to themselves and check in with themselves. And I think I found a lot of my purpose in that as well. I found a lot of, it feeds me to help other people to understand themselves better and to just check in and not necessarily go on some mad spiritual psychedelic adventure where you become some shaman or like a healer at the end of it, but just to check in and be like, how actually are you? How are you doing? That's just one element of it. And then there is the element of me actually going down the rabbit hole a little bit further and asking like, well, how does all of this work? And like, I'm starting to realize that most of what I've learned in my life, I'm having to now unlearn in order to make space for like actual reality to like drop in. And how far does that rabbit hole go? You know, so that's one aspect of like the psychonaut kind of exploration that I'm interested in. But the what's come out of this journey for me is like this purpose-driven, permission slip giving. You can feel your feelings. It's okay. Like, show up just in your absolute deepest authenticity right now. What's real for you right now, with no mask, with no nothing. Just give it to me raw, because I can hold that space for you. And actually, not just on the internet, but in real life, that's really come online for me as well. Like holding space for people and just lending an ear, like a non-judgmental, purely compassionate. And I find in those times when if it's a friend or just someone I've met like at a music festival, sometimes one of my viewers that I meet at these the music festival scene in South Africa before the pandemic as like world class. And I'll meet these young dudes who have been watching my content since they were 15 on the side of a dance floor at these music festivals. And sometimes they just want to open up to me and start telling me about their stuff. And there's a part of me that comes online that's like, yeah, this is actually feeding me too. And this person is maybe feeling seen and heard for the first time ever. And that really triggered something in me that I'm really diving into a little bit more, especially in when it comes to holding space for men and the men's work movement. I don't know if you're familiar with the organization called Sacred Sons.
Yeah.
You know those guys?
Yeah, that's a really cool group, and something that men probably wouldn't have sought out on their own. Really, like it's such a good idea. You could follow them on Instagram. Beautiful images of full-grown men being embraced by other men, hands to the heart, so that person can cry and not have to feel like that's something weird or something that men shouldn't do.
Yeah, that was a pivotal experience of mine in my journey for sure. It's beautiful imagery and they nail all of their content. But it's their live events and their online events actually that really are incredibly healing for men. And in my experience, I went out to California and did two back-to-back weekends with them. And in between the weekends, also did a level 1 facilitator training to learn how to run a men's circle, which interestingly, like just 2 hours before we got on this podcast, I was holding space for and hosting. I have a men's circle online on Zoom. And it's such a beautifully healing space to be in. And if you're a man or identify as masculine as a being, it's like, and you're interested in doing this deep healing work, men's work is, I believe, one of the pivotal things that is going to completely help shift humanity into this, what some people, I suppose, would call like a new earth, or just a new, more expanded conscious paradigm where men aren't operating from a state of fear where they want to dominate. They're operating from a state of lack where there's not enough resources, so I have to take and hoard it. All of these old paradigms that sort of the masculine has been operating from, that is reflected in the patriarchy, really. Like there are groups of men who are helping to heal that wounded masculine, like the father wound, basically, that causes that sort of inherited multi-generational potentially wound of not feeling like you're enough, not feeling like you're lovable unless you achieve something. And these are quite like common threads throughout a man's experience in the 21st century, which is why we as men often find ourselves from a subconscious space, like competing for women, competing for money, competing for power. And this is, I believe, one of the main reasons why we're in this a bit of a sticky situation at the moment, is because of a lot of men are operating from that unhealed, maybe emotionally scarred or traumatized young boy within them. And men's work really has, in my experience, really allowed me to not just shine a light on those aspects of me. And of course, with all of these healing practices, it's like, hey, you got to feel it to heal it. You got to like have a good cry, or you got to rage out and feel that anger and allow the emotion to actually shift, so you don't carry it in your physical body anymore. But to take it to a deeper level, and on these weekends, these like men's retreats, basically, to be witnessed by other men with open hearts who are doing this work too, be witnessed in your process like that, it heals that father wound. And it helped me say, oh, fuck, there are men that that the young boy within me can really trust. And now the young boy within me can really trust me too. And then I start acting from that, let's say, like the initiated masculine consciousness, as opposed to the juvenile masculine consciousness, which is like a fear-based operating system, I suppose. Mm-hmm. So that's something that's super interesting to me, in terms of big humanity shifts that we're moving through at the moment. And Sacred Sons are just killing that facilitation game. So yeah, if you're a dude and you're interested in this healing work and you're interested in like showing up, or at least being and participating in a movement of men being more safe to be around, if you're interested in that, definitely check out Sacred Sons, at Sacred Sons on Instagram. And they're running events all over the US all the time, and I'm dying to get out to another one.
It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool group. Now, I haven't attended that one, but I've actually seen in the wake of that, there's a lot of other men's groups that are actually popping up, and I'm noticing that it's setting a trend. Yeah. And that's what I like about it is it's showing that this is not just okay too, but this is, because there's a lot of things that are coming out that's like, I want to express myself this way, and that's okay too. But this is something that's like, no, this is a type of modality, getting together with men, being open and honest. Like it's very, very simple parameters to it, but it's something that you can tell society lost. You can tell that we lost it for quite some time. And this is just what it looks like society self-corrects. This is something that's, you can also definitely tell this isn't a top-down, governmental organization. This is grassroots. It's like we're discovering what we need more of, so we take it into our own hands and we do it ourselves. And I want to go back to something you said before, because I very much so resonate with it. When you're talking about the old you as an influencer, and then this new thing where you said, hey folks, maybe I'm going to step away for a little bit. And then you realize, no, what if I just engage with it? What if I embrace what's happening and allow my YouTube channel to accurately represent the changes that I go through, so I don't have to be, Ben Brown, the static influencer that never changes, and you can always count on me to be this way. Don't worry about it. What I love about that is that's exactly how I've seen my entire career. And whereas I've touched a lot of different genres, and maybe not a lot of genres, but genres where people will pop into the Ben Stewart world and be like, through psychedelica. And they're like, oh, wow, psychedelics blowing my mind. I got to connect with this guy. And then they start going through my work and they're like, whoa. And he's also talking about, World Economic Forum, sentient world simulation, things that are going on in the world today. And to be perfectly honest, like I'm conspiracy light, when I'm talking about things that are thrown into the category of conspiracy, I don't even go to the ultimate fringe. And I also very much so admit that, a lot of this stuff I could be dead wrong, or I could be piecing it together wrong, and I'm fine with that. I still think that a lot of people are way too afraid of things that is just casual research to me. So with that being said,
I fully agree with that. Yeah.
With that being said, like I have to deal with audience members not understanding. Like they came in and they were like, Ben Stewart, the Psychedelica brand, why are you talking about all this other stuff? And I say, this is honest. This is legitimately me. And I also love doing the other stuff that is like Psychedelica, mainly talking about psychedelics and shamanism throughout history and where we can see it going in the future. The film with Aubrey Marcus that's coming out, primarily talking about darkness and, rites of passage and going into darkroom retreats. The last thing that I did, DMT Quest, primarily talking about endogenous DMT. But the thing is like the people who stick around long enough, they notice that what's really being presented here is the same reason why I tell people we should start using our voice more. I don't care what you talk about, as long as you're speaking from the soul. You're speaking from that thing that you're here to be voicing. You're here to be expressing. And what I love about that is that, I did notice, I'm not going to say a loss of a bunch of subscribers, but I did notice like a stagnating, and I can't tell exactly where it came from, but I noticed that there will be an influx from one area, and then they'll see what I'm about. And it's like almost like they have to do a double take and just sit back and watch like, where is this guy really going with what he's talking about? Because I want to know if I feel safe listening to it. And so, for me, I've just kind of let it go to there's something bigger happening here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to speak to my truth, and I'm going to let those who stick around be the ones that I'm honestly speaking to what they came to hear, whether they knew it or not. So I have to say that thank you for doing that, because to get to a point here, there's a lot of people that are doing podcasts, and I've had people who have contacted me and be like, thank you for saying use your voice, because I've been feeling like I should do a podcast, but then again, everyone and their uncle is doing a podcast. And I say to them, is there a problem with that? Because everyone and their uncle used to, when Facebook was becoming a thing and MySpace was becoming a thing, there was people holding back on something that inside they really wanted to do because everyone and their uncle was doing it. And that's when I'm saying, like, you know what, there's a lot of people who were never meant to get into the podcast game that will fizzle out. But those who are coming to it because they're like, I was put here on earth to express to people this very thing, and I have experience with this very thing. I feel like the future is going to sort out all this stuff. And I do love the fact that somebody like you didn't just follow what do influencers do with this many followers and subscribers? I guess I need to stay within those parameters, or else, right? Or else what? Like, let's change the playing field. Let Ben Brown use his influence to change what is okay in podcasts, just like the Sacred Sons changed what's okay for men to do when they have a week off, right? So thank you for doing that. And with your podcast, thank you for, even though you've been doing it for 2 years and you've done 23 podcasts, that's basically like one a month, you stuck with it, and you're still talking about very relevant stuff that I find relevant to me in my life, that I find value in. So I want to hop into the very last podcast that I heard. You can find it on Spotify. And I forget the title of it, but the most recent one was about a family of otters that, and I'd love to hear this story, because it's kind of funny how you thought it was a dog rustling around in the reeds. And what was the medicine, and explain to those who may not understand otter medicine, like what does that mean? Like you found their gallbladder and you got some medicine from them, or I want to understand how you view.
They were offering me some kind of experimental jab. The otters. It's really actually quite inappropriate. I'm joking.
I'm in, by the way.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for that reflection. Just so affirming for some of the trials and tribulations, internal battles that I go through and have been through in using my voice, and really allowing that to come online, because it's such a big piece for me in my journey. Because I have discovered recently that I do just have like quite a fucking clear bullshit detector. Like I can tell when, like, really quite quickly what's true and what's not true, regardless of what my qualifications are on a subject. There's like a deep internal truth that sometimes comes out where I'm like, okay, this is like that, and that's that, and that's that, end of story. And so for my whole life, as I've quite often been in modern society, certainly, like seeing so much nonsense go on around me. And even as a young kid and a young teenager, I'm like, the amount of times I've had to swallow down saying something that I've wanted to say. And so I've had to do a lot of work, and I continue to do a lot of work in activating this throat chakra area and like healing that and allowing it to be used. And starting the podcast was a huge part in that journey for me, and continues to be. And interestingly, I've made like 23 in total, but I've made 3 in the last 4 days. And so it's coming back online again, and it's coming back online because I feel like my courage to use my voice is coming back online. And that's part of that is like not giving quite as many fucks about what people think anymore, which is difficult as a recovering people pleaser, online and offline. So as I go on this journey and I've have these experiences and I go internally and I discover like what my authentic self is, I get a lot of confidence from that. And that self-confidence piece is really important when we're communicating what's true for us, how we see things, especially in a world now where there's a lot of gaslighting going on. And I'm saying my experience is different to what you're saying. Like, this is what I see, this is what I'm experiencing, and we can quite often get told like that's wrong, what you're experiencing is wrong, and your reality is can be shut down and denied. And it's kind of what we do to kids quite a lot of the time, like, you've got nothing to cry about, sort of thing, you've got nothing to complain about, and the kid's just trying to express themselves authentically, and they just have their reality sort of closed down. And if we do this to multiple generations, and we have multiple generations of adults who grow up questioning whether what they're experiencing is real or not. So going inside and like discovering that, oh no, there is this like internal confidence, what I'm experiencing is real, despite what you guys say or what is happening in your specific realities. Then it's like, now I've got to use this, because there are other people who deserve also to have their voices activated too, at a time when censorship is going mad, and for some reason conversations are shut down unless you're like, show me your qualifications. It's like, well, I'm still allowed to have a conversation. How can I discover the truth about something if I can't even have a conversation about it? And so I think it's really important that if people are feeling called to start a podcast, if people are feeling called to start a YouTube channel, a lot of people ask me over the years, it's always a yes. It's like, just go for it. The absolute last thing that you want to do is, in 10 years' time, wonder if you should have started a podcast or if you should have started a YouTube channel. Because, and I've been asked thousands of times, how do you think I should start a YouTube channel? Over the years, of all the people, I was thinking about starting a YouTube channel, but I'm not so sure about this. And I always just say, you've got a telephone that films stuff. Like, you don't need the equipment either. The editing software is free. If you just make something, export it and upload it, and the whole process of doing that, you will learn so much about yourself. And that's the most valuable piece to any of this creative expression. And for me, what I've learned about, like, I've sort of cherry picked my expressions, or the way I express myself artistically and through my videos as well, from other people who are successful, who I deemed as successful. And this is all sort of before I realized, like, oh, there's this authentic version of myself that I'm now discovering. And now over the last couple of years, I'm like, okay, well, who do I want to be? Who do I want to express from? And instead of just copying what might be popular the whole time. And then, because ultimately where that ended me was, I was pretending to be someone I wasn't most of the time. And that got so uncomfortable. And I refused to look at it subconsciously. I didn't even realize what was going on. This is all like out of my awareness. But it just piled up and piled up and piled up to the point where I believe that I was guided into a motorcycle accident so that I could be pulled out of that matrix, out of that like illusion of identity, and go on the incredibly beautiful and painful experience of discovering who I actually am. And now the reason I'm making more podcasts again, and the reason I'm super excited to start making more YouTube videos again, is because I feel like I know who I am now, and I feel like that confidence comes through in the way I speak to people in real life and online, and the way I speak to the camera now. And I also feel like as my lifestyle is lending itself to me being more of a flow state, then I can actually get into a flow state, and then it's actually just like my heart just explodes, and I feel like I'm in the pocket. And there's nothing better than feeling like you're in the flow state. And yeah, I feel like that's how I want to experience my life. That's how I want to carve out my career, through self-expression from truth at a time when I feel like it's needed more than ever, you know? So that's the service piece to me as well. It's like, how can I be of service? Looking for meaning in my life. I want to be of service to other people. And I have a Patreon community as well, where I drop little voice notes into a Telegram group and make videos for them, and create a bit of a community where I know that I'm not going to be judged in how I express myself. So I also give myself like tiers. Like there are certain things that I wouldn't put on my YouTube channel that I would put on my Patreon. There are certain things that I'll speak to on my podcast that I won't put on my YouTube channel because there's no fucking comment section on my podcast. So I'm also protecting myself, you know, so that I can carry on serving the people who actually want to see it. Yeah.
Lovely, man. So there's two things I want to say about that. And for one, you mentioned like, you know, people asking, should I start a podcast? It's something that I'm constantly getting asked as well. And for me, it always comes back to like, are you feeling called? Are you legitimately feeling called? Just go over some of the reasons, you know. But another thing is that I've had people ask and say like, I really want to, but I don't feel like I'm qualified. And then I keep coming back to, qualifications are for specific things, right? You know, if you're going to talk about microbiology, it would help to be a microbiologist, you know? It doesn't have to be that way either. You could be, I mean, this is what I love about the guy that I worked on DMT Quest with. His name is John Chavez. He's not a scientist. He has no credentials or letters behind his name, but the guy can hold down a conversation with the best of the psychedelic chemists out there, the best of, you know, the neurologists, whatever they may be. And he understands, he understands the lingo, he can keep up with it. And he's also well abreast of all of the documentation that's out there. You know, so what I have to say is, most people, like, if you've gone down your path at all, then you know more than people who are admittedly at the beginning of such a path, you know. And for me, you know, like, I'll tell people when I don't have a specific credential, like, and I also don't recommend things like psychedelics and things that could, you know, need a bit more nuanced conversation around it than I would offer. So I really appreciate what you're saying there, is that you really, the authenticity has become part of the brand, which is so needed, because the bottom line is the landscape for podcasting is rapidly changing. It's still like in flux, and there will be new platforms, new ways to get it to market. So getting in at this level is still kind of getting in cryptocurrency. It is the ground floor before it becomes the new normal. The only thing that didn't resonate with me with what you were saying was the absence of the otter medicine.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of skirted around that.
Tell us about the otters.
All right, on with the otter story. So I'm staying, for a bit of context, in Cape Town. I'm staying in a little town really quite far south of the city, which is right next to a nature reserve. And I'm in a little cabin that's like an Airbnb. I'm a 7-minute walk from the beach, and the walk down to the beach is along a fence line of a huge Cape Point nature reserve, and there's like all sorts of animals, ostriches and things in there. And so this is like my sort of walking, moving meditation in the morning. I go down to the beach and have a swim. I've missed my morning swim, so I took my towel and went for an evening swim, and I almost didn't go because it started raining, but I was like, fuck this, I'm going to go for my swim. I need to clear my head. And I was walking, there's a boardwalk that goes through the reeds, and there's like quite a nice river that comes down off the mountains, and there's these tall reeds, and I'm walking along and I just hear the reeds on the one side of the river just rustling, and I'm like looking across, and the first thing that springs to mind is like, oh, there's someone's dog has like gone in there and got caught in the reeds, and I'm going to have to like go and fetch him. And as I looked a little bit further, there's like a hole in the reeds, and then this little otter's head just pops out and is like checking me out like this. And immediately tingles up my spine. And my whole day, I'd had a bit of funky day, like feeling pretty average. And I was like, holy shit, this just, my whole body came online. And it was almost like that moment when the first sort of waves of a mushroom journey sort of goes from, and you just go into like a different level.
Engage.
And everything around you kind of changes. Yeah. And I was engaged with this otter, and so I just sat down cross-legged and just watched them, and then 3 more of them popped out, and there was this little family of 4 otters just checking me out. And I was contemplating that day particularly, like what does freedom mean? Like, what does it mean to be free? Like, we're talking about having our freedoms taken away, and like this is quite heavy in conversation at the moment. And it's interesting to me because I'm like, well, our freedoms were pretty limited in the first place, depending on like what your take on freedom is. Mm-hmm. And so I realized in this moment that I'm having these downloads, I suppose you could, or like realizations or remembrances even, that directly from nature. And it's not just the otters, but the whole symbiosis of the scene that I am plugged into. And it's like, this is freedom. Like what you're witnessing right now is otters ottering, reeds are reading, the river is rivering, the clouds are clouding, and like everything just is, and it just is being itself, and it doesn't have to try, it just does it. It's so automatic that it's free. The otters are so free because they don't have to worry about whether they're ottering or not. They just do it. And I was like, oh fuck, well, we are nature. Like, we are children of planet Earth. We're children of Mother Nature. And I mean, we are blessed or cursed with this awareness of ourselves, where we have to question, are we doing it right? But the freedom is the not thinking about it too much. The freedom is just in the acceptance of exactly what's happening in this now moment. And I think I also in the podcast refer to Nelson Mandela, and he was imprisoned for 20 plus years on Robben Island here in South Africa, which is just off the coast of Cape Town. And he maintained his mind throughout that. He didn't lose his mind, and I don't think there's many people that wouldn't lose their mind in 20 plus years of jail time. But he managed to hold his perception of what was going on to him. So in his head, he was free, regardless of what was going on externally that was completely outside of his control. Now, I've realized, along with many other people with this pandemic, that like I never was really in control of any of this. Like any of this could have just flipped on its head at any moment. And things can just happen in our lives, left, right, and center, constantly. And and we really have very limited control over them. But what we can control is our perception of how we perceive what is happening to us. And that's what Nelson Mandela did in the prison. He was like, okay, this is out of my control. This isn't ideal, but I'm going to be friends with the guards. I'm going to write a book. And when I come out, I'm going to be the president of South Africa and bring this country back into a state of like freedom. And so what I was learning from the otters and from the nature is like, don't overthink it. Like, you don't have to constantly be trying to figure out how to be, just be. And your body will know. There's an intelligence that's within that is far more intelligent than our minds are at figuring things out. And yeah, it was just a really beautiful moment for me to not just understand, but understand. And by that, like with that tingle up the spine and that like feeling of like almost like a psychedelic vibration that I was receiving from nature, that just puts the biggest smile on my face. And I came home, had a really cold swim in the Atlantic, and then had a hot shower, hit record on a podcast, and I was like, guys, I've got a story about otters for you. And then it was such a pleasure to explain that, because the feeling was so fresh within me. It was really easy for me to get into that flow state and sort of transmit that experience. And yeah, that's really where I'm finding a lot of joy at the moment. It's like telling little stories like that and being present enough in my life to receive the otter medicine. And you asked me what is otter medicine, and it's like that's the medicine. The medicine is anything that brings us back to who we truly are, and helps us remember who we truly are, that takes us out of our mind and puts us in a state of like feeling like we trust ourselves, we trust what's going on, we trust the unfolding of all of the things, and we trust the intelligence that is giving life to us. And that for me is medicine. So medicine can be like plant medicine, of course. So it's have your first high dose of psilocybin mushrooms, and you're going to be reminded of a whole bunch of things that you might have forgotten. But medicine can also be a really deep and meaningful conversation with someone, or just being in the presence of someone who is seeing everything through compassionate and loving eyes and non-judgmental eyes.
It can be
medicine could be anything.
It can be a person, a place, or a thing. And the key thing I'm hearing through all these through lines is authenticity. Whether it's you as an influencer in the content you make, whether it's you as a leader, whether it's you as a mother or a father, brother or sister, whether it's you in whatever role you play within this big global crazy thing we got going on here. And the tricky part is, because we have this self-awareness, how do we handle those moments when we're questioning, should I be authentic or should I say what they want to hear? Or, should I choose the fearful response or the response based out of my heart and what I'm about? And that's the challenge that a lot of us, we're not taught this in school. And if we don't have really great role models around us, or family or friends to help teach us and be instructive with emotional intelligence and dealing with the craziness of society and all the different distractions and just information is thrown at us so much more now than ever. I think everyone has the ability. I think innately everyone can be authentic. The hard part is expressing that authenticity, is implementing the authenticity, is choosing to respond in a way, especially when it's to somebody you love and respect, but it might make them a little bit angry, for instance, right? Like, I love you, but I want to speak my truth here. And it doesn't mean you have to be a dick or condescending when you present your truth, though. That's the other key thing that I see within sort of the truth community. And I think there's a balance between both worlds that can help each other. But do you guys relate to that at all?
100%.
It's funny. There's Sid Goldberg at Gaia. You remember him, Gordo. He used to say, because he used to follow around a guru, and he asked him one time, should we always speak our truth? Because Sid was very straightforward, and that's what I loved about him. He was funny, he was nice, but he was very straightforward. And he said, should we always speak our truth? And should we always tell people the truth? And the guru just looked at him and said, that's assuming you know the truth. And that's really the crux of most of it is we are speaking from a place within us. Sometimes we do land on something that is a resonant truth for the whole party that's listening, the whole, body politic right there. And then sometimes it's slightly off, or it's actually insensitive, or hadn't considered a different framing of it. And so I find that very fascinating. But I also think that's really beautiful when you're mentioning the otters and you're mentioning freedom. By the way, Destiny Rocks on the chat is saying, this is such a refreshing and enlightening otter story. So thank you. I don't think I've ever felt this good listening to a story about otters.
Otters got a long way. His impact.
Yeah. Otter medicine is pretty incredible, and they're totally freaking dogs in the water. That's, if you look at them, they behave that way as well.
They're bigger than you think as well. They're like medium-sized dogs, bro. They got some weight to them.
Corgi.
Is that right?
I feel like I was getting quite close to their den. Is it an otter den?
Yeah, there's a few of them. They're probably nearby.
It's an octagon, and they were inviting you in for a match.
Jiu-jitsu otter.
They were coming at me. They were coming at me though. They were kind of warning me off a little bit. So I kind of gave them a bit of distance and respected their space. But
I can tell. I can tell that. And I mean, I had in Tennessee it was a huge wolf spider, and I was just showing my kids. I was pointing at it with a stick. And the spider didn't like that. I wasn't poking it or antagonizing it either. It just crawled onto the stick and started racing towards me. And I did everything but shriek. I was just like, what the heck? Like, I'm not looking for a fight. But it's pretty incredible animals, in the way that, size to them, they'll bring bravery, before retreat sometimes, which is pretty incredible. I want to focus on, there's something you said about freedoms, and you mentioned something that definitely resonates with me. You said, like, when it comes to the big conversation of the day, that our freedoms are being stripped away from us. And it is a very good point to bring up, like, what is freedom, and how long have we had the freedoms that we have today? And would you call those freedoms, or would you call them liberties? And they're like, what's interesting is, when I was in the military, we would get this thing, like, I mean, we weren't in the Navy, but they would call it like shore leave. And, in basic training, we'd go out from San Antonio out to the Alamo and stuff like that. And they called it liberty. You have liberty to do this. And there's a difference between freedom and liberty. But the main point I'm driving at is, we do often, in an affluent society, we do often take all the different things that we have at our disposal that are, when was it that it wasn't Gorbachev, but it was somebody else who came over to the States from Russia in the late 80s or the 90s, and they saw in every single gas station, like, it went to a 7-Eleven and saw every flavor Slurpee, every kind of candy you could ever imagine, all these options. And they were like, in our most luxurious stores back home, we don't have these kinds of options. And to us, it's kind of like the very first plane ride that had Wi-Fi. It worked for 5 minutes and then it stopped working. And all of a sudden, 5 minutes of the very first plane ride with Wi-Fi, and everyone was complaining, where's my Wi-Fi? They didn't have it before. It was the very first time it had ever happened.
It's going to space.
This is how, right?
Chill.
This is how accustomed we are to what is provided to us. And if you think about children nowadays, they're like, if internet is slow, they're like, what the heck is going on? And so to me, we say our freedoms are being stripped away. We don't really understand. And when I say we, I'm making a blanket statement, because a lot of people do, because they research it. But we don't really understand what it took to get us to this level of affluence. And we also maybe don't respect how important it was to struggle through the heat in the summer and the cold in the winter, to struggle through, okay, well, there's nothing in season that I actually like, so I'm going to be eating some boring stuff for the next couple of months. The just having, a roof over our house, that whenever something goes wrong, we have a specialist that can come out and fix it. Like, This is very, very new in the human experience. So what is our freedom? What's being taken away? And I want to ask you this in a very specific way. So you've done something that I'm also very much so like navigating and surfing, which is monetizing the influencer. And that is through all the social media, through YouTube, through all these different things, making a living detached from the corporation. So I can literally, like I'm in Austin right now, still doing what I would have had to do, back in Tennessee, but I can do that thanks to the world that we're living in today. And I'm not saying that we're not losing a lot and that what's happening in the world isn't absolutely mind-boggling to some people don't see it as a red flag. But with that being said, I want to know, like, what has it been for you, navigating that terrain? Because there are a lot of people who listen to this show that are also very interested in making that jump and making that move into being independent, being an influencer, monetizing it. So could you help the audience understand just some of the hoops that you have to jump through so you could actually have that freedom, like, right, travel the world, going to incredible places. You're an influencer, so you could use your phone. It's all consumer friendly and also high quality, high fidelity. How have you navigated that, and where do you feel that's brought you in terms of your freedom to travel around the place, to do the things that you love in a brand new way that 20 years ago people would have been like, impossible. There's no monetization model for that unless you have a film crew following you around, and that's going to be way too expensive. Bring us into a better understanding of, because I think this is the future. Bring us into a better understanding of what that landscape looks like.
Okay. So since I was a kid, when I was kayaking and just completely obsessed with kayaking, my role models who were winning Olympic medals and world championships, they mostly worked for themselves. And so I was like, okay, well, that's the key. They get to work for themselves. They choose their hours so that they can train 2 or 3 times a day. That's the key to just doing whatever you want. And so I've always been sort of entrepreneurial online. I started off I bought a vinyl cutter to make stickers, like those cool vinyl cut stickers where you I don't know if you've ever seen MacBook stickers where people put some kind of design on their MacBook. I was one of the first people like making those at home and shipping them all around the world. And this was just to fund my flights to Cape Town, or to put fuel in my car to go on a road trip. And so I've always been like trying to just discover or keep my eyes out for any opportunities to potentially make money on my terms and in my time. And so freedom for me is like, how much time do I have to spend doing the things that I want to do? And if I can spend some of that time making money doing something I also want to do, then I'm living the freest life ever. So for me, I was like loving making YouTube videos. And that took up a whole bunch of my time. And I don't think there's any way around that kind of volume output. There's no way around like just the sheer amount of hours that you have to put into sitting in front of a laptop. And you got to make like 100 or 200 videos before you really get quite quick with the editing. And even then, when you get quick with the editing, you just put more time into the edit anyway to make the whole thing better. So it's like, it's like what's the priority? Like is it rest time or time in general, or enough money to travel, or because there's no point if freedom to you looks like going and backpacking around Asia on like $10 a day, then you only need to make like $3,000 and put it in the bank to go there for a year plus your airfare. So there's no point in like working for 10 years or getting yourself qualified for a job that is going to mean that you're not going to be able to that you have to sort of work up a corporate ladder, or spend years building up a client base, or maybe it's like hands-on work where you actually need to be present for it. Right now, we're living in I don't think I'm even at all qualified to speak to the latest ways to make money. Like, I'm only just starting to investigate the crypto game, and the priority for me is not because I love crypto. It's like, oh, this could be a way for me to make money with less time, and have my money make money, so that ultimately I get more freedom, which is just time to me. I just want time to have the options to do whatever I want. I want to be able to take 3 to 6 months of literally living in an Airbnb cabin and just being in nature and getting otter downloads. That's what freedom looks like to me. So I'm happy to put in the time and sacrifice the time to like find out what is the fastest way for me to do this, but not necessarily even the fastest, but like, what's the most rewarding? I don't want to do something that I absolutely hate for like 10 years to then retire early. I'd rather do something that I love for 20 years or 30 years, and that makes me plenty of money, and I get like 3 months to travel per year. Like it's a balance. I think it's super unique for everybody. But I think the key piece is that there are new opportunities arriving all over the place. And looking back, it may seem like you were super lucky. But luck, I suppose, is just preparation meeting an opportunity. The preparation putting you in a position where you can actually see the opportunity in the first place, and then not see it as an impossibility. You're like, oh, I could actually do that because I've got all this prep. Now, when I started making films on YouTube, I'd already learned how to make films, but just for the fun of it. And so I was like, okay, back then I was still on the British kayaking team as well. So I had a relatively interesting lifestyle, I suppose, and I could make videos. And there's one of my friends, Louis Cole, whose name online was Fun for Louis. And he was one of the original every single day daily vloggers. And one of his secondary channel was called Food for Louis. So it was back in the day when you used to have 2 channels. And the way I always describe the story is, he was on the YouTube train and it had left the platform, and I am running along the platform, and he's like hanging off the back of the train, like with his arm out, just going, come on. And I jump on, and he pulls me onto the YouTube train, and we leave everybody behind. I just made it onto that, onto that. And that's my story. And I know that there are people that are starting a YouTube channel today that will probably hit 1 million subscribers in 6 months, just making something that nobody's ever made before, or in a way that nobody's ever made before. There's more people getting onto YouTube every single day to watch content. And so that I was in a position to take that opportunity when it arrived. So I think if there's any kind of advice to be given out of it, it's like, discover what it is that really lights you up. Because you can make a shitload of money trading, doing stocks and shares and stuff like that, but are you gonna hate it and do it for a year but make enough money to cover you for 10 years or 20 years? Is that worth it to you? Like, what's the payoff? Could you be putting your time and effort into something that maybe seems like a little bit less of a possibility, but is more creative and is actually going to be more fulfilling an endeavor? Or do you just, I think the piece is like, always go inwards and discover yourself. Like, learn who you are, learn what turns you on, learn what makes you turned on by life, and chase that feeling, and discover how you could potentially monetize that without bastardizing it and like throwing it away and then hating it because you've turned it into a career. And if you find yourself in a position where you're taking something that you love and you're trying desperately to monetize it, and it's turning out that you're hating it now, find something else to do. I certainly fell out of love with filmmaking, with all of the journey and the roller coaster that I've been on, being so I was so attached to the content that I was putting out, and I was so attached to the feedback that I was getting from it. And I feel like now I'm only just starting to fall in love with it again. And what it took was to not have to make money out of it. I'm like, okay, I can make money doing other things. I can continue to fund the freedom that I love so dearly, the freedom to like pretty much live anywhere that I want in the world, the freedom to not have to clock in on a 9 to 5 is like an absolute no-brainer for me. And I've done the 9 to 5s, and there's a lot to be learned there, and there's a lot to be said for like people who are needing to just make money and getting that shit done. But it can't just be a means to an end. It has to be like a jump stone to the next thing. So the commitment there is like, like how much do you want that perceived freedom, and how much do you want to live out the dream life? What does the dream life even look like for you? And you can't really begin to understand what it might look like for you until you put down what other people's dream lives are and sort of close off that noise that tells you this is what you should be dreaming for, this is what you should be after. You got to have the fast cars, you got to have the women, you got to have the yachts and the Gucci shoes with no socks, weird shit. And but in the end you might discover after all of that actually you just want a family and a community of people who really see you for who you are. And you maybe just want to grow your own food. You want to live off grid. You want to be more connected to nature, and discover the incredible experience of deepening your ability to be present and just be. Like it's so fundamentally exciting just to exist when you get to that level, and you don't need any of that other shit most of the time. And yeah, it's fun, and I don't judge people for how they like to spend their money or the things that turn them on. And certainly, like, I fucking love to drive a fast car, and I probably would drive an Audi R8 if I could afford to have one. And maybe one day I'll have a Tesla, but I've had tastes of all of that throughout my career, all of the glitz and the glam and the first class and being paid to do post Instagrams and all of the things that kids at school are like, that's my dream career. Yeah. I've done all of that, and throughout 95% of it I was fucking anxious because I was worried about getting the shot, and I was worried about getting the video out on time because I was trying to please my audience, because without a happy audience, none of this would exist. So I was sort of caught in this cycle of dependency and traveling all over the world. But you know, when you're not present for something, when you're anxious, when you're in your head, you're not experiencing the full experience. And so, yeah, my advice to anybody who's like wanting to be a content creator or make YouTube videos or do the travel vlogging, it's not a dead industry at all. It's growing constantly, and to bring your unique essence to it is what is wanted. There are people out there that want to watch you, but they want to watch your authentic reaction to being at this Bali waterfall, not just like the same old thing but with a different person. It's like, how does it make you feel? This is the sort of next wave, I think, of content creation and content creators, is like deep, authentic vibrations that when someone watches it, they can feel it too. They can feel it in here. And that's the deep motivator to like get off your ass and make your dreams a reality.
Yeah, I mean, just my 2 cents, I see that exactly. And that's kind of a through line I've been kind of wanting to say this whole time, is it's so refreshing and good to hear that, okay, maybe with the advent of YouTube and the start of the internet, we came out the gates and it was a little bit too superficial and sensationalist, and MTV Cribs, you know, that sort of model of like, hey guys, what's up? Come on in, you know, the very just selling on the glamour. But as it's evolved and been nurtured and is sort of this living organism, collective organism we're all adding to, it's refreshing to hear that. I know what we're trying to add to, and you're adding, Ben, is this new wave of authentic content and making this the new cool, because culture drives so much of this world, whether it's, you know, politics or, you know, AB's, you know, culture is probably the biggest catalyst to drive so much of everything. And when you have cultural icons and people being put on pedestals that, you know, don't embody a really amazing, authentic behavior and being the best version of yourself and all the stuff you're touching to, you're going to see that repeated in the youth. You're going to see people who look up to them repeat those similar mistakes. And it is what it is. It's all good. Like you said, we're not here to point fingers or say, oh, this person's the reason. It's fine. It's just part of the process. And as long as we continue to have more people and we nurture the voices that are an embodiment of this new sort of cultural zeitgeist, that's what matters. And the rest, I think the beautiful thing that's going to occur is the authentic voices will rise to the top. I think you will start to see people more tuning in and giving the demand to these type of voices. You're already seeing it. You know, when you follow who's really doing well, it's the authentic voices, whether it's in comedy and culture or news or whatever. Those are the people who are really rising and doing well within YouTube, even if they are being, you know, attacked by certain algorithms, things that don't like them. I think in the long term, it will win out, and you will have a much more richer, authentic connection with your audience versus like when you experience, if you say something that all of a sudden goes against the agenda of what they think, you immediately see where the sort of the true colors lie with certain subscribers, and it's all good, you know, but I'd rather have that dynamic, and that's what we're trying to create from the ground here. And yeah, we're kind of doing it in reverse. You got really big and now you're switching it. And I have a friend who's a YouTuber had a similar situation in the tech space, but I don't care when you do it, as long as it's happening. Awesome. It's great to see that occurring because it's needed. And I hope more of the youth especially are saying this is what's cool. It's cool to be authentic.
Yeah.
You're
and
definitely right about that.
That authenticity is like a lot of the time it's just checking in and being like, yeah, but how's your mental health right now? Like, this is all cool and everything, but are you good? Like, yeah. And if not, that's cool too, but let's talk about it and be open about it. And that level of vulnerability. Exactly. And quite often the most authentic voices are not necessarily the loudest ones either, because they don't necessarily always need to feel the need to like fill the room. And all the attention on them. And now it's like, okay, but everyone with an authentic voice does actually need to turn the volume up a little bit now and become the loudest in the room too. And give people permission to do that, to like make some noise without being a perfectionist about what they're saying necessarily.
For sure. You know what I love about what you're saying right there, man, is and also going back to what you were talking about, Gordo, is there's like, you know, Pink Floyd. A lot of people are like, yeah, Roger Waters, David Gilmour. And it's like, yeah, but Pink Floyd, the whole band, they created something that no one individual in that band could have done. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to whatever label you want to put on it. It's like, you know, conscious content creators, whether that be in, you know, everything audiovisual, let's say, that you can put up on YouTube and stuff like that, that we are doing something together, whether we know it or not. And we're going through bumpy parts where we don't realize that a lot more people are accepting of diversity than we're making it seem at times. But there's a perfectly good reason for talking about the clash of diversity, because a lot of the times it's hard to be mirrored back to ourselves what could be different in our lives. And beyond that, what I guess I'm saying is like, we're doing something that's bigger than us. Like the reason why I am calling for people to use their voice, whether that be, you know, anything in the art space, I would say, because I really feel like art is the way to circumvent the revolt type of thing where, you know, there needs to be blood, it needs to be carnage before we're ever going to see real change. I feel like art is a perfect sidestep, right? Is a perfect sidestep to any of that. But the bottom line is we are, you know, Destiny put up here, and thank you, Destiny, so much. She donated, but she also said time is the ultimate currency, which is going back to what, Ben, you were talking about with, like, what would you want to do if backpacking through, you know, Asia and $10 a day is your thing, then you don't need to work for a year on Wall Street to be able to, you know, to afford that. And then, you know, also really just taking into consideration that when we're creating cultural content, that I'm also speaking for myself, but I'm speaking to something that's much higher. Think Pink Floyd, right? This epiphenomena in the culture creators. We're talking about different things, and they're under one umbrella, and that one umbrella seems to be the through line is people who are speaking up even when it's difficult, knowing that it's what I'm called to do. And I know I'm about to lose my follower base, or I know there's a great possibility that I'll be ridiculed from people who I went to high school with and all that kind of crap, you know, but the bottom line is we're doing this for something bigger than ourselves. And I was just, as I said in the beginning, I was interviewing Jamie Wheel from the Flow Genome Project earlier today. And he was talking about the whole 7 generations. If you know about the Lakota and, you know, many of the Native American philosophies of 7 generations, when council sits and they need to make a decision that's going to affect their entire way of life or the entire culture, the entire tribe, they need to take into consideration how it's going to affect the next 7 generations. And he even says, taking a look at how do we honor the past 3 generations and the next 3 generations, and look at my generation as being that moment in the now that can push us into the future we want. So maybe you know, us two Bens and Gordo, we don't see it in our lifetime where it really, really makes a difference what we're doing now. But maybe using our voice, we won't see all the glitz and the glamour and the reward, other than the intrinsic reward of being honest and authentic with what we came here to express. What is our truth? And I'm going to say it. I'm okay with being wrong, and I can laugh at myself if I make a mistake. But the bottom line is we're working towards something bigger. And that's how and why I really appreciate what you're doing, Ben. Gordo, what you're doing is, you know, yet again, it's just another side of the same thing. We're all building this incredible machine that is going to start moving perpetually on its own. And with that, I feel like it takes a lot of the weight off of it. You know, all I need to do is be an expert on me. I don't need to be an expert on anything else. I can strive for perfection, but if I land on excellence, fuck yeah, that's all I really need. You know, so I guess, like, with that being said, you know, in my admiration for what it is that you're doing, you know, Ben, I really want to know, like, where does the future lie for you? I was thinking, like, you know, you have a mad following on YouTube, on Instagram, and then now there's all these new alternative platforms that are coming up. Like, you know, what are we talking about? There's Rockfin. What else?
Rumble,
Gordo, that we're on?
BitChute. Rumble's the big one that I'm digging, the new one.
Yeah. So like, have you been looking into stuff like that, Ben? Like these alternative platforms, you have such a following that you could potentially go to some of these and really start bringing in what I feel that some of these alternative platforms are lacking is content. Like anywhere else, they're lacking in the diversity of it, and you could bring something really valuable that is you speaking, just like bending the envelope of what needs to be talked about right now, not just, you know, did you know what the administration is up to now? It's just like, yeah, that's great, we need that, but we need some of the other parts of the choir and some other parts of the orchestra as well. So with that being said, I guess the question is where's the future for, like, even just the next 6 months? What are you looking forward to in this ever-changing world for you to not just adapt to, but thrive in this new landscape?
That's such a great question. And I think it's so exciting that I can't give you such a definitive answer, really. Isn't that just like the beauty of sort of discovering and letting life unfold? And I feel like I'm in a position now where I'm really starting to learn how to cultivate presence with myself and follow like an inner guidance. So I'm curious as to know where that inner guidance is taking me. And interestingly, one of the big shifts that's taken place for me recently is putting to one side for a moment habitual regular cannabis use, and that's bringing me into a place right now where I'm like feeling like I can be so present. I know exactly what I need to do in any given moment, and there's no overthinking it, there's no questioning it, and I have all the life force energy and the inspiration and the enthusiasm to do it. And that's not something that's been coming online for me very regularly or consistently for a couple of years now, because I haven't really known like what's the meaning of it, what's the point of it, because I have almost like this traumatic relationship with content creation, whereas gaining and losing respect from followers and friends throughout this whole process. And so now I'm like, I'm actually just showing up for the game now. I'm realizing that this is a game, and I'm not going to let other people's opinions about me or what I'm doing interrupt my flow. So long as I'm in flow and I'm in touch with my authenticity, and I can check in with that at any time. And so I feel like I'm sort of handing the steering wheel over to like an internal guidance system at this stage, where it's like we're participating in, like you say, a machine that's building, and we're not even necessarily going to see the full implications of what we're speaking to, or the permission slips that we're giving to other people, and the ripples and the waves and the impact that we're having just by speaking up about these things. We might not see those implications, or the impact of it rather, in our lifetime. It would be nice to, but I'm doing it for my future life, my future incarnations of me, you know, and my children and my children's children. It's like it's almost like it's almost like the path of least resistance in a lot of ways, because it's inevitable that it's going to happen, and to have that kind of faith that the whole thing is course correcting and writing itself and harmonizing over time, that it's the ego that's like, oh, I was on the right side of history, but as long as I'm following what's going on in here, then I'm always going to be on the right side of my own history. It's when I start ignoring this and start like being overly concerned about what other people think about what I'm speaking to, what my opinions are, or the content that I'm creating. But that being said, like, more YouTube videos, definitely more. I'm really loving sitting in front of a microphone and getting into my little flow state, recording that for my podcasts, having more guests on my podcast as well, where we can have some nice DMCs and go long form with it too. And Ben, I'd love to have you as a guest on New Perceptions sometime.
I would love it.
But I've also been talking to Brian Marescu.
And talk about him. Yeah,
he's great.
God, I'm like, oh shit,
Immortality Key.
Yes, that's the book.
Yeah,
and I actually need to audiobook that. But
it's a great book.
I have, with this clout that I have online and a little funny little interesting blue tick that I have, which somehow people think I have some kind of responsibility to speak to things that align with their opinion, because it's just kind of how the internet works, I suppose. But I also have the ability to drop in DMs with people and be like, actually, come on my podcast, please. And So yeah, just opening up that forum, but doing it in a way that's like not like I know all the answers, because my ego is like, I like to be the person who knows the thing and you don't know it, but to just actually genuinely, authentically be in awe and wonder of the conversations that could be taking place, and that I could be facilitating. And because when I chat to some of my friends who are just incredible human beings, and some of the information they tell me and the things that they enlighten me with, I'm like, my reaction is genuinely like mind blown. And so I think there's a lot of podcasts at the moment, certainly ones that I really enjoy, but there's some incredible stuff. I'm listening to the podcast and I'm pausing it, just going, what the fuck? That's epic. Like, that's just changed my whole reality. But the podcast like host is like, cool. So, and I think I'm going to be the podcast guest that allows the listener to really just have their mind blown by that and just go, whoa. So you're telling me this, and just bring it back to earth a little bit. I don't know, make it, humanize it more, you know, because this whole fucking journey is blowing my fucking mind. And like, the more I learn, and the more I learn how much I don't really know, you know, I love going down the rabbit hole, and I love going down the rabbit hole with people and creating that portal together, and allowing my human to have his mind blown too. So
it's what we're kind of doing together, right? I mean, we're all kind of already down the rabbit hole by being here in the first place. We want to get real meta, you know, but this is a game and we're just avatars and playing some different levels. But sorry,
I might have to ask you guys about new platforms though, because I'm really not, I can do a lot better at like keeping up with the latest bits and pieces. I suppose again, that comes from a place of like, there's not really anymore, but for a long time, a part of me is like, I don't want to be on the internet at all anymore. I'm so done with just being on the internet and putting myself out there. So I really like wasn't looking for whatever the latest platforms were. But yeah, we certainly live in exciting times where there's going to be like blockchain platforms and some super interesting stuff coming up. So I think as I have more enthusiasm for being on those platforms and putting more time and effort in a sustainable way. This is the thing with before, like the work that I was putting in to the podcast, the work that I was putting into my vlogs, where I was editing for hours and hours and hours a day, came from a place of where I thought I was in competition with other vloggers. And I was taking from my kayaking athlete days. I was like, okay, I know how to do the success thing. I can be successful in this thing. I'm just going to apply the same thing to content creation and just fucking win it. But there's no finish line. Yeah. So you just end up like I just ground myself into the ground, overworked myself, and then ended up really disliking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I want to comment on that real quick, because I've also noticed, like, so when I made my films back in 2008, 2009, it was right after my third film, Ungrip, where I remember saying, like, I think I'm done. I think I'm done as a filmmaker. I'm tired of the internet. I'm tired of like, what have you done for me lately? And man, it wasn't even the way it is today.
Yeah.
Not even close back then. Yeah. You know, so but what I kind of began realizing was that it was a challenge for me, and you know, I shouldn't be afraid of challenge. Yes, it causes me to sit in front of a computer many hours a day, and that's not something that's ideal for me, but there is intrinsic reward in it. And I also noticed that, okay, how could I use this challenge? I love it, and then there's stuff about it that I absolutely can't stand, which is all the sitting, all the touching technology, all the having to figure out upgrades and new nuances of whatever is so time consuming.
Mate, charging batteries the whole time. Did you get over charging batteries, mate?
Yeah, charging batteries, figuring out why this software is not letting this other thing work over here. Just figuring
keeping
out
lenses clean.
Dude, it's so much. It's so much. But like, so for me, I also noticed that like, how can I use it to the best of my ability for what I have? And what I have right now is something that keeps me engaged. It's a discipline, it's a daily routine. And in that, I've learned to, well, okay, this is my, it's part of my mystery school. A lot of this is a mystery to me. And really, when you engage in outside mysteries, you do learn a lot about yourself. And, sometimes it's monotonous. And that's something that, like, I'm definitely looking to just focus on the things that I love about it the most. But I also do notice that what I'm doing isn't just about me. As much as I would love to be up right now playing with my kids downstairs and other stuff like that, if I focus on what I'm not getting out of what I'm doing, like I chose to be here, and if I were to focus on what I'm not getting out of it, then really that's me defeating my own the purpose of my own pursuit doing this. So almost like the Nelson Mandela, it's just like, well, it doesn't seem like I'm going to get out of here. And it doesn't seem like anytime soon. And it also doesn't seem like it's going to be a smart move to try and escape. So how do I find my freedom and make this my school of life right here? And it's not the easiest thing, but, that's what I heard when you were saying, allow for the audience to see me the way that I am. And that way, what my YouTube channel is, what my podcast is moments every single day where not only do I get allowed to like build my business and really, say what it is that I came here to say, but I also have the daily practice of sitting and doing it, even though it's hard, even though sometimes it doesn't fit with my schedule, whatever it might be. There's something deep there that can be learned about, your school of life can be whatever you choose to do. And in fact, it is. So I appreciate that. I hear that in your voice. And yeah, definitely like lean on Gordo and I for tips on. Gordo is really up to date on like the tips on what's new, what's coming out there, what kind of audience is there, what the potential is there. Even if certain audience is a minor niche, blow it up. We know about like being an influencer. It's not like you're finding like, well, I'm going to master working out, like that demographic. Like, no. Find a niche, like find working out to Marilyn Manson or something like that. Then you'll find that you're not competing with too many people. So the bottom line is with that, like, I guess as we're bringing this to a close, we covered a lot of ground here, but my last question was also like, if you can put it however you want to put it, but if you can put it more in like your own spiritual path, what is the next big thing on your horizon? Not just for the world, it can be serving, but like the biggest impact that you see before you leave this place. What is that goal in your mind, and how do you plan on moving towards it?
Such a good question. The number one thing that's motivating me to get out of bed in the morning and to actually create and get into that space of one of my teachers, Andrew, he says to do what needs to be done. Like it's that purpose-driven action. That something that's really motivating and inspiring me is to have a family, man. Like I'm so curious about my own existence, about my life, about other people, about all the different beautiful facets of existing as a human being. You tell me, you probably, language doesn't do it justice, but like having a child and having a family and relating on that level must just bring the whole human experience into a completely different reality. And that's something I'm feeling really called to focus on as kind of an end goal for now. I know there's going to be multiple other things that I want to create, but in terms of lifestyle, it's like, okay, continue doing the things that I love, that I'm feeling internally passionate about and called to do, and monetize them to the best of my ability, which is also a journey for me of like playing in the Matrix and like figuring out how to human better, and so that I can actually create a life for myself where I can bring children into this world and have the freedom of time to actually spend with them and go on mad adventures with them and learn so much from them. And yeah, who knows where that's gonna take me. But if I can also do as much of my own healing as possible, not without like intensely focusing on it so much, because I've been down that route and we can get a little bit obsessed with the story, but to do enough healing that my children are going to not inherit quite so much shit. They'll inherit some other bullshit, I'm sure, that I'm not aware of yet. But that's like a real interest to me. And in the meantime, if all of the stuff that I'm creating is also helping assist humanity move in the direction of my children's children being all right, like, and actually not just surviving but thriving in a harmonious world, that's the kind of, like you were saying before, like the 7 generations, that really struck a chord for me, because it's like, oh, there's so much more to this life than just me. It's like, yeah, I'm the tip of the genetic spear of my bloodline, but like we know that like time is like a bit of an illusion, so everything is happening like collapsed into the now, or however. I don't really have the language to explain how I feel about it, but I'm doing this for the me that doesn't exist yet. I'm doing this for the me that's your children's children, that unity consciousness, that like that understanding that it's all the same thing. And hopefully bringing some people along the way, or like planting a few seeds that who knows what will happen or what will grow there in people's minds to like expand their consciousness. Whether that looks like me just being the weirdest, wackiest version of myself, where people go, "Ooh, that guy's weird," and that's like planted a seed of like authentic expression, or they'll learn not to judge people through that, or just having a real deep, meaningful conversation, or making a brother feel safe to express himself and what that means for his son in the future, and like, how many ripples can we send out that are going to positively impact the planet and humanity as one being, through our own intentional, heart-led action? That excites me.
I really appreciate the family part. I've twin boys, Dennis and Menace. They're downstairs, and I have a 6-year-old daughter, so twin 2-year-olds and a 6-year-old daughter. And wow. By the way, she put a question on this paper. I have all my questions written out, and she wrote down at the bottom, "yellow lemonade snack" with a question mark. So I want you to answer that after this. But I guess like where I was going with it was like, I remember traveling the world nonstop, dude, and I would go to some beautiful places. And then back when I was smoking, I would just rip a joint and sit there and look at beautiful nature. And you know what I'd think? Damn, I wish there was people around that I loved that I could share this with. Nobody else is like taking road trips all the time like I am. Like, I just constantly wanted, I barely worked throughout my 20s. I mean, like, I hustled when it came to the band and the things that I did do, but I was just traveling, and that's been my 30s too. But I finally have a family, and I realized that now I'm going on some of the same road trips that I was going on back before I had kids. And I took my kids just a few weeks ago to the Grand Canyon. And bad choice, by the way. This is twin kids running in opposite directions.
Joe Dirt. So you get lost.
A lot of anxiety. Cliff edges everywhere. It's like
I got lost in Grand Canyon.
Oh man, yeah. So I could have thought that one through a little bit more, but it was so beautiful to be able to bring my family to show them old Route 66. Like where there's this town, Bullhead City. I forget what it's called. Where there's just a bunch of donkeys running through the streets, and it's an old Western town. All these places I used to travel, I'm taking my kids to. and I'm seeing it for the first time again. I'm seeing it through their eyes, like they're touching the redwoods, looking up at it, and strangely, they're underwhelmed by the redwoods. Maybe they couldn't grasp the enormity of it, but they were like digging in the dirt, having a great time, and I was just like, this is what it's about. Like the world is super beautiful, and it's also, there's something to be said for doing it alone and experiencing these things alone without a whisper, without having to monetize it or put a picture up on Instagram. But then again, like, you know, that idea that like, you don't monetize it, don't put it up on Instagram, put your phone down when you're at a concert. And it's like, what if you spend 95% of the time with your phone down? Is it all right to put it up for 5 minutes? You know, like,
Yeah.
these are the things that I'm noticing, that it's like, no, share your journey with people. Now's the time to really share your journey and share the stepping stone processes of it. And I'll end with this. I was on the Aubrey Marcus podcast just a couple days ago. It hasn't launched yet, but I was just telling him like, hey man, it was easy making a film with you because you speak so well to your inner process. And he's like, yeah, you know, I wish sometimes I would be a better example for my audience, that I could, like, you know, that I don't have to be in the midst of all my journey and my shit, you know. And I'm like, dude, I was like, I think the exact
You mean
opposite,
not being
because
alive?
like, right. Well, and I'm talking like, you know, I told him, I was like, okay, so there are some like Eckhart Tolles and, you know, people who you can tell by looking at them and listening to them, a lot of their pain and the pain of their journey is in the past. Like they've arrived somewhere real. But that also becomes less relatable to people who are listening to your podcast. And I'm saying, like, Aubrey, like, you're going through an amazing journey that many, many people want to go through, and you're actively showing us the stepping stones. You're speaking well to your folly along the way. Like that could be far more potentiated and pregnant with possibility for the audience than somebody who's already got it figured out, and you know, you're trying to relate with this person who's already on cloud nine. So with that being said, man, I love that I feel the same honesty, authenticity, humility, and then also lightness. It's not super hard. You're not like, damn, life is so hard, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. You're also like, yeah, man, you know, it has its ups and downs, but like, again,
I'm not that kind of Pisces, bro. I'm not emo.
You could be if you just put the hair in front of the face a little bit and screamed a little more, but you know, dude, I want to say I really appreciate you, man. This conversation's been great.
Thank you, brother.
The whole chat has been like really just blowing up, and a lot of people have mentioned also, thank you for just how you speak to your journey. And if anything, we got to talk about otters in a very spiritual way.
Hey, that's what I'm all about. I'm spiritual as fuck.
At the dove.
Oh, I love it, dude.
Amazing.
I love it. This has been a great time for me. It's been a great ride.
Mate, it's been an absolute honor for me. Like honestly, just one of, like we were saying in the beginning, like one of those synchronistic things. And yeah, I've been watching your stuff for a long time, and just may not have been following you on Instagram for a long time, but like as soon as I found you on Instagram, I was like, oh, it's this guy that makes those films. And like, I can't believe I'm doing a podcast with you now. This is the best thing ever. It's really affirming for me, and just like also giving me such confidence and a permission slip also, just to like press on. So thank you for the recognition. I really take it all to heart, genuinely. And I'll take it with me on my journey and move from that space. And thank you so much, Gordon, as well. I really appreciate you being in this space too, and for facilitating all of the technical bits and pieces. And yeah, just fucking love you guys.
Making us look good. Yeah. Thank you, Gordo. We'll have to do it appreciate again. You. We'll definitely will. Yeah. And for sure, like I'd love to come on your pod, and that's kind of what, I mean, it's not kind of, that's exactly what this is about. You know, community, however we can build community, network, however we can network. And, you know, this thing will keep growing. And So with that, I just want to make sure that people know how they can engage with you. How can they find you online? How can they engage with you? Give them the deets.
Cool. Yeah, that's my Instagram right there, Ben Jam, and my YouTube channel is youtube.com/Ben Brown, or you can just Google Ben Brown, and I've been on the internet for long enough now that it comes up, I think. My website is benjam.uk, and I've got a couple of photographic art prints for sale up there, and I've got a Patreon community with a whole bunch of exclusive content. Patreon.com/BenJamBrown. And that's it.
Sick. You have 777 posts. I would encourage you to just stop there. I'm just kidding.
Well, the thing
Please
is, I've posted
there.
maybe 2,000. Every time I post one now, I archive one so that it stays on that number, so that people think I'm super spiritual as some kind of synchronicity, and then they follow me.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, dude. You read my mind. I was like, there's something about this guy and that number. I got to do it. So, man, this is brilliant.
Gotcha.
I love all your work, man. I love the attention to color and detail and all the imagery that you show. I love the heart that you bring to the videos. When you're speaking, it resonates through your voice. We'd love to have you back. And dude, I just want to say again, the fact that you're in South Africa, that right now I'm in Austin in a Hobbit house, and Gordo is God knows where in Virginia.
I'm in outer space, bro.
Well, he's definitely in outer space. The fact that we get to do this, I just want to say that I'm also grateful for exactly where we're at in human history. Bring it on. You know, like it's all here to let me, to provide experience for all of us, to step deeper into our potential. You know, that's what all challenges seem to do. And I have to say thank you to exactly the way it's set up. I want to say thank you to the whole audience that, you know, was just freaking popping off, man. You know, I went through some of the comments. It was great. I appreciate that you all come back every Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern. We do this every Thursday. Like I said, Mondays, I have my Waking Infinity news and my deeper dives. Go to benjosephstewart.com. You can get access to exclusive content. And just generally, thank you for all your engagement, and for everybody out there who really wants to know thyself a little bit better.
And the Discord.
There's
a lot
Discord chat.
It's popping off. People, community. We're all about community here at Discord. Obviously, offline is more real, but we'll take what we can get. Yeah. So check out the Discord community, people.
And that's all down in the show notes. So with that being said, I'm so grateful for all of you. I'm really appreciative that there's this opportunity to bring these kind of messages out to you. And the fact that we can talk about fucking otters this way is just mind-boggling. So with that being said, make sure you check it out next Thursday again, and I'll catch you guys next time on the Ben Stewart Podcast.